Hey guys, welcome back to the stream and happy Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? I don't even know. What day is it? Where am I? I have no idea. Your girl is running on multiple cups of coffee and a dream and vibes, baby, because I flew in this morning on the red-eye flight back from Los Angeles to be home here in Miami, Florida, to be back in the home studio with you guys, because that is the most important thing that we do every day. And I'm really, really excited for today's stream in particular because it's a topic very few people are talking about. We are going to be covering the wildly, grossly underreported story that America and the world at large is not facing overpopulation, but instead an imminent threat of population collapse, that our birth rate is dramatically too low, fertility rates are declining in the developed world, and we desperately need to make more babies, which I don't know about you, sounds pretty dang fun. I had the opportunity last night to be back on the Viral Whatever podcast in Santa Barbara, California. We had a crazy 24 hours yesterday in Los Angeles, and we got to sit down with Lila Rose from Live Action on her podcast. We did tons of content with the amazing team over at PragerU, and then ended the night in Santa Barbara on the Whatever podcast. I know a bunch of you guys were watching live last night, and I have a lot of thoughts about how last night unfolded that I can't wait to dive into with all of you guys. And I really want to kick off the stream by just getting something off my chest that's been weighing on me for a while. Before we do that, and I get really vulnerable and honest, I go on my rant for a one-time only conversation about all of the crazy things happening on the internet and in politics this week. Please, please, please do me a huge favor so that more people can be aware of this underreported story of population collapse, and like the stream if you haven't already. That could look like a little thumbs up or a heart, depending on where you're watching. And most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button to help us continue growing the channel one person at a time. We are going to say hi to some people in our live chat before we jump into all of the nitty gritty. So especially if you guys are new, let us know who you are, where you're watching from, and if you are a first-time viewer. Nitty Witty is kicking things off for us over on Getter. We've got Magic Def, African Warlord, Alex Padron, Tito, and more over on Locals. Lance and Mike Quilwin are kicking things off for us in the Rumble chat. We've got Spare Trees, Northern Wanderer, Total Package, G-Fact, Carolyn, Peter, Tyler, and more, all watching on YouTube. And over on Instagram, we've got OB Tabit, first-time viewer. Nate is watching from Ohio, so very cool. We've got Kevin watching in London, Corey in Washington, D.C., S. York Miners watching in Spokane, Washington. So very cool. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for a few years. Nax is watching in Ignacio, Spain. Very, very cool. We've got Unit watching in Houston, Texas. Knoxville, other Texas people. Made in Teora watching in New Zealand. So very cool. Willie's watching from Bahrain. Amazing. All over the freaking world. Stefan watching in Romania. We've got Pennsylvania, Ohio, Oklahoma, Czech Republic, Australia, Down Under. I'm so bad at an Australian accent. I really got to work on that. Germany, South Africa, Oklahoma, Denton, Texas, more Australia, and more. I'm so excited every time I see people watching from other countries, by the way, because really 99.9% of what we talk about, even though my origins as a content creator really started inside of the American political space, 99.9% of what we talk about every day has nothing to do with American politics or partisan politics in the United States sense. It's just an assault on Western civilization across the world. And so I hear all the time from people watching in the Middle East, people watching in Australia or New Zealand or the UK or Canada or all across Europe, that you guys are experiencing all of these same problems too. And it's really encouraging to know that through social media, this incredible gift that we've been given, we can create a coalition around the world to keep fighting for goodness, beauty, and truth every single day, which is exactly what we try to do around here on the stream. So indulge me for just a moment, because I think this is an important little tidbit to share with you guys. It's been weighing on my heart a lot lately, just the constant negativity in social media activism as of late. And I think it's really disheartening, especially if you're up close to the political world, to see so much anger and division and personal attacks and slander against people in the last couple of weeks, more than any other time in the last few years. I've gotten a lot of messages about it from you guys as consumers of content, from other creators, and I've really tried to stay out of all of the drama and just believe that a rising tide lifts all ships, that we don't need to continue attacking one another or getting involved in a lot of this pointless infighting, because we have a so much more important goal that is so much bigger than trying to prove who's a real conservative or a real Christian or who agrees with me on every single thing under the sun. I just don't really think that that's productive, and it certainly isn't changing culture. And I've been pretty outspoken about this for a long time. You know, I think there's nothing really productive anymore to reach Generation Z, for example, with own the libs content that's going to get 50 million views on Twitter. Like, congratulations, you got 50 million views on Twitter. But did you actually change somebody's mind? Did we actually create a new path forward? Did we actually impact culture to try to win the culture war? No, if that's the case. And so I've really dedicated my stream and my content over the last few years to do something a whole lot more meaningful than just owning the other side or stirring up more division or trying to go viral on the internet. And I think it's paying off. I think people are really resonating with more authentic content. We're resonating with more cultural issues rather than who the presidential nominee is or what particular political party you're affiliated with. And it's creating a more conservative culture in America in the process. That's exactly what I decided to write my book about, The End of the Alphabet, which just came out in the last couple of weeks, that I'm seeing this radical revolution happening within Generation Z as a backlash to authoritarian leftism in culture. We're wanting to get married. We're believing in God. We're rejecting leftist liberal arts degrees. We're starting our own businesses. We're eating real food. We're deleting our dating apps. We're quitting our birth control. Like, all signs point to our generation having a revolutionary 1776 style moment in 2024. And I see that from you guys every single day. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's what helps me to remain optimistic and hopeful and positive as a content creator. But so many people are just refusing to do something meaningful. They want to continue stirring division. They want to continue going viral for themselves. They want to continue chasing clickbait and 5-second internet fame. And I just want to say, in response to a lot of the questions that I've gotten from you guys about it in DMs and comments, I just don't really have time for that. And I don't think any of us should have time for that, because we are running out of time to fight for truth, to fight for morality and goodness, to fight for beauty in society that's attacking these things incessantly, day in and day out, from every possible angle on the battlefield of this culture war that we are fighting every day. Last night, as I mentioned, I was back in Santa Barbara on the Whatever podcast, and I actually wrote about my first experience on the Whatever podcast in my new book, because it was so flooring to me how much common ground I was facing with all of these young women who couldn't possibly have been more different from myself a little over a year ago. People who are OnlyFans creators or pornography actresses, people who were recovering sex addicts. And I wrote about this in my book, and I've told you guys this story before on the stream, but a year ago, I'm sitting at this table expecting to be arguing with all of these women, and instead I'm seeing just how broken they are and how depressed and miserable they are because of leftist culture. They're saying that they were heartbroken because they felt victimized by hookup culture, that they knew they voluntarily participated in it, but it was presented as this liberating feminist release yourself from the chains of the patriarchy movement that really left them feeling hollow and empty inside. Every single one of these girls had said they quit their hormonal birth control within the last year, or were really thinking about it because they were tired of taking slow release poison and being anxious and depressed and suicidal all the time from this magic pill that was supposed to solve all of their problems, but was giving them a whole lot more problems in the process. These women were saying that they didn't necessarily identify with modern feminism, even though they would consider themselves to be progressive and on the left, they felt like modern feminism was selling them short on what they could accomplish in their life, that they could only have a career or a family and nothing in between. And good luck having a family, by the way, without being completely ridiculed by the modern left. So I'm seeing all of this happening, and I found such an incredible light at the end of the tunnel, hopeful moment on the Whatever podcast a year ago. So I was really excited about having those same conversations again last night. And if you guys tuned into the podcast last night, I was there for about 4 hours, and then I left a little bit early before they wrapped everything up to make it back to the airport for my red-eye flight last night. I did have a lot of those conversations last night, but there was also an element of not allowing for those conversations to take place because disagreement and discourse in a negative way and trying to like own each other was more important for the virality and for the clicks and for a 5-second soundbite that's going to get posted to Twitter to make somebody look like they shut down a radical feminist. But it wasn't indicative of the whole story. And so I was a little frustrated, and I have been throughout the last couple of weeks, just knowing that I'm seeing an opportunity to dramatically, radically change culture within Generation Z as I'm sitting across the table from 2 OnlyFans creators, as I'm sitting across the table from leftist students on California college campuses, as I'm sitting across the table from people who would consider themselves lesbian or bisexual or whatever. And I'm listening to every single one of these girls raise their hand and say, I want to get married someday. Every single one of the girls on the podcast last night said, I want to get married someday, which is insanely countercultural to the America that we live in today, where we have the lowest marriage rate in American history since we began recording marriage rates in 1867. Modern feminism has destroyed marriage, and yet every single one of these women, including those that would call themselves progressive feminist leftists right now, rose their hand and said, I want to get married after college. I want to get married in the next few years of my life. Every single one of the women sitting around this table, except for one, said, I want to have kids and I want to be a good mom. And that's the most important thing that a woman can do in her life. Like, how conservative of a thing to say. The most important thing that a woman can do with her life is to be a good mom. I was floored hearing that from these young women last night, even though these young women might consider themselves liberals or leftists, even though these young women would have called themselves feminists, although most of them refused to identify with the feminist label. They wanted more than what the left is offering to them on a silver platter. They're realizing the emptiness of hookup culture. They're realizing the emptiness of a familyless society. They're realizing the power in committed monogamous relationships. They're realizing the devastating effects of pornography. Every one of them said porn was a problem for society. Crazy! But you don't get to see that, unfortunately, because 99% of the time, what happens from this show is you'll see a clip that's 90 seconds long posted to Instagram Reels or TikTok or Twitter about viral disagreement, about shutting down the radical feminists, about owning the libs. And I just don't find that productive or meaningful or able to make a difference in society at all. So I don't know who needs to hear this, but we have got to change the playbook. We have to wake up and realize that we have an opportunity today in 2024, unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire lifetime, to make an entire generation radically conservative. Not necessarily what you might consider conservative with a political connotation, but traditionally values-based, timeless values-based conservative. When everyone wants marriage, when everyone wants to be a parent, which we're going to talk about today on the stream, when everybody wants to believe in God as society is telling us not to, when everyone wants discourse and dialogue. These girls that could not have been more politically different from myself were literally begging to have a meaningful conversation about things like abortion and pornography last night because they were curious. They'd never heard a difference of opinion, but there's a hunger there. There's a desire there There's a need societally for people to speak the truth in love, not in the angry, vitriolic, divisive, own the libs mannerisms that we think have worked really well to garner Twitter virality for the last 5 years. Okay, congrats. But in a desperate attempt to cling to something bigger. I see hope and opportunity and joy in that fight for our generation. But it will cease to have the opportunity to exist as it does right now if we keep looking at Generation Z, particularly Generation Z women, and saying, nah, you're stupid, you're uneducated, you're these insane feminists, you hate men. Even when that's not said, that's never even been implied from young women. We need men, and we very much acknowledge that. So the assumptions and the division and the anger and the labeling has just got to stop. Period, full stop. And I realized that in the midst of our conversation last night and was a little bit frustrated by that. But I really think I was there for a reason last night, because I say this all the time when I speak on high school and college campuses. People ask, how do you know when you're making a difference? Like, how do you know if you changed somebody's mind? Most of the time I talk to people and they yell and scream at me and they don't want to have conversations about the really big cultural issues of our time, like gender theory or abortion or pornography or dating or whatever, any of these things we talk about on the stream every day. And I remind people 99.999% of the time, you won't know. You will never know if you change somebody's mind. It's not the same instant gratification as the own the libs viral clickbait content gives you instant gratification of 5 million views and 100,000 new followers. But every once in a while, you will get a glimpse into seeing what speaking the truth in love does to dramatically change somebody's life. And as we were running out of the studio last night, I'm running to the car because we're late and I'm afraid I'm going to miss my flight. And I hear behind me, Isabel Brown, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but can I just catch you really quick? And I turned around, and standing outside of the studio was a young man named Mick. He was actually on the Whatever podcast with me a year ago as the then fiance or boyfriend, I can't remember, but I think it was fiance, of a girl on the panel who was an active OnlyFans creator. And you guys might remember those clips going pretty viral. People were calling him like a beta male soy boy, and people were saying that he didn't know how to stand up for himself, and he was getting walked all over in his relationship by this angry, evil feminist girl who really couldn't care less about him. And it was sad to see him dunked on all over the internet, because I heard him even then have this glimmer of opportunity to realize that his life could be so much more meaningful. And so a year plus ago on the podcast, I tried really hard to converse with him and to just be kind, to speak the truth in love, but to steer him in a little bit of a different direction in a more positive way. And this young man yesterday said, I was watching you on the podcast again tonight. I don't know if you remember, we were on together about a year ago. And I said, of course I remember, of course. And I immediately gave him a big hug. Here is a picture of Mick as he came and found me outside of the podcast studio last night in Santa Barbara. And he stopped me and said, I know you have to go to the airport, but can I just really tell you, I'm going to start crying saying this. Can I just tell you, you have totally changed my life. And last year on the podcast, I had this huge awakening in my own personal life that I didn't want to live like this anymore. Lo and behold, that girl that everybody warned me about left me for another guy. Big surprise there. But it forced me to totally reevaluate my life and to think about this. I'm literally crying. I'm sorry. And to think about the type of man that I want to be. And I want to be a husband. I want to be a provider. I want to be a strong man for our generation. I really turned my life around. I watch your content every day. I just ordered a copy of your book. I bought a cabin in North Carolina, and I am moving away from California. I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm investing in real estate to try to provide for myself. And thank you for what you do, because you are changing people's lives in this generation in a productive way. You're not just trying to own people. You're trying to steer things in a more positive direction for our future. And you did that for me. My world changed because I was on this podcast with you. And I'm standing there talking to him, and I'm like literally bawling my eyes out while we're taking this picture last night. But I totally think I was supposed to be there last night, because for all of the frustrations that people were saying that like everybody was talking over each other last night and nobody could have a meaningful conversation, this encounter for about 20 seconds made me get in the car and go to the airport and say, that's exactly why we do what we do. That's exactly why I get out of bed every morning. And that's what, for some reason, whatever reason, people are failing to grasp at the opportunity that we have to change lives to this extent. Owning the libs for 5 seconds on social media is not going to do anything productive for your career. You might get 5 million views on one video. Congrats. Okay, on Twitter, where Gen Z isn't even present at all. It's not a litmus test for our generation. But who are you inspiring? What values are you conserving? How are you trying to build a future on offense for a country that we can be proud to call home again? If you can't answer those questions, then what are we doing here? Then what's the point? I think for so long, the conservative movement has fought on defense. And rightfully so. We've had to fight on defense because the left has strategically taken over every single pillar of American society over the last several decades. Just a few days ago on the stream, we read the 45 goals of the Communist Party from 60 years ago that it's quite evident to me they were able to accomplish, taking over the education system, taking over the entertainment industry, taking over the police system and the FBI, taking over our structures of governance, taking over everything that they possibly could, the church, and trying to invalidate the church. They've successfully done that, and so it's forced conservatives in this quote-unquote culture war. And I don't say conservative connotating with a particular presidential candidate or political party. I'm saying this more as a cultural perspective. It's forced conservatives to be on defense, to react to the crazy videos, to point the finger at people and say, look how crazy, look how stupid, wow, 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 look over there, that's so bad. But I think we've been operating on defense for so long that we've lost the plot entirely, or we just don't even have a plot to begin with for how to fight on offense, for how to build something of a coalition, to bring people with you patiently over time, to walk with them and deprogram people from the insane levels of programming indoctrination that they've received in every part of American society and culture throughout their whole lifetime, and to just tell them the truth. More than anything, what this generation is longing for is the truth. Because our society has become so subjective. Our society has become so anything goes. There are no consequences to your actions. My truth is different from your truth. My morality is different from your morality. That the idea of a solid foundation, of something that is immovable, of something that cannot be shaken is so attractive. And yet, I'm watching political conservatives, I'm watching Christians this week, I'm watching very powerful people, influencers, commentators, etc., gate check people at the door and say, yeah, we want everybody to think like us, our ideas are better, but you can't think like us because XYZ. Because you've done something bad in the past, because you haven't always shared my religion, because you campaigned for BLM when you were 19 years old and you didn't know any better. And I just think, how sad, how shallow, how pretentious of us to look at somebody desperately longing for something bigger, for something to latch onto, for something to have hope in, and try to take that away from people because they aren't immediately on board with every single thing that we believe in. That's not changing people's minds. That's not winning a culture war. That's not even fighting in a culture war. That's pretending like you're trying to change culture while pointing the finger at culture and saying you suck and we want nothing to do with you and you're not welcome here in this new version of things that we're trying to make better. Maybe the most obvious example of what this looked like for me and where I'm really frustrated, and this is the last thing I'll say about it before we move on, was a tweet that I saw about Nala Ray, who is my amazing new friend and was on the stream a couple of days ago. There was incredible response to her interview the first time she really shared her testimony publicly. And then she was on Michael Knowles a few days later, and they had an amazing conversation as well. But in case you guys missed the episode, Nala actually went viral on the Whatever podcast of all places about 5-6 months ago as a top 0.01% creator on OnlyFans. And on the Whatever podcast, she was talking about how it's really attractive sexually to her to cheat on people and how promiscuity is a really wonderful thing for women. And literally like 3 months after that, she got baptized in the Christian faith. She deleted her OnlyFans content. Unfortunately, she still has to keep the account for a little while until the last subscriptions run out and she has to deal with all of her taxes. So the platform technically is still there, but all of the content on the platform is gone. She deleted tens of thousands of illicit images and videos all over the internet, and she is dedicating her entire life now to spreading the truth of the gospel and a message of hope and repentance and running away from sin to our generation from the most unlikely of places. That is so beautiful to behold. But all over the internet, I'm watching Christian influencers and conservative Christian political voices gate check this beautiful young woman at the door and say, well, that's nice, but you're faking it. It's not real, even though they've never talked to her. They've never met her. They don't know anything about her life. And even if it was true, what you did was so bad that we will never accept you. There was a tweet, and I'm not going to say who it's from. You can go look this up yourself, on Twitter yesterday that absolutely enraged me about this. A very common, popular female conservative influencer said, these OnlyFans girls can pray their slutty behavior away all they want. They will never be respectable, no matter how much they cry to God. Praying to be a respectable person doesn't work once you do sex work. Gee, tell that to Mary Magdalene. It's best that we shun women like this from society forever. And that same person went on to tweet about Michael Knowles having Nala on his show. Why do @Michael J. Knowles and his simp fan accounts fight harder for porn stars than they fight for Donald Trump? Truly depraved behavior from Con Inc. that does nothing to help Trump get reelected. Nobody cares about the soul of a washed up hooker. We have real issues to worry about. I don't believe in stirring up more anger and division and vitriol, especially on Twitter where souls go to die. I genuinely believe that. But to paint a more positive picture or to respond to that with something a bit more meaningful, I hope and pray that the salvation of souls will always be more important than who we're trying to get elected to the presidency of the United States. I hope and pray that for 5 seconds, people with a platform can think bigger than how do I personally go viral today and how do I do something meaningful for the broken souls of our generation. I hope and pray that we never tell someone, especially someone with the capacity to reach tens of millions of people with the truth, from a very unlikely place. I hope we never tell those people what you did was so bad that it's best we shun women like this from society forever. Because here's the real deal. Maybe it's just that my priorities have dramatically changed over the last year or so. Maybe it's that I've really intentionally focused on more cultural issues and less on political issues because I see the urgency there for our generation. Maybe it's because I'm developing a little bit of a softer heart towards our generation who has been so systematically indoctrinated by the left that we do desperately need the truth. And it takes time. It's not an immediate own the libs, hit you over the head process that works. It's speaking the truth in love, which cannot be divorced from the truth, that is effective over time. Maybe it's all of those things combined, but what we do here on this platform, what any of us do here in this lifetime, what the call to action through activism should look like, should never center around getting somebody elected to the presidency of the United States or screaming at each other over political infighting for one policy initiative or trying to gate check people at the door for not being a real conservative or not being a real Christian or not whatever the issue of the day happens to be. If all of this went away tomorrow, if the United States went away tomorrow, which it could, theoretically, I hope not, and it's still worth fighting for, and I'm going to keep showing up and fighting for it, but if it went away tomorrow, if my family went away tomorrow, if I was deplatformed tomorrow because the FBI finally decides to wise up and treat the good Catholic in me as the domestic terrorist they claim we all are, if any of that happened tomorrow, what I do every day still doesn't change. All of our collective vocation shouldn't be to amass virality. It shouldn't be to garner clicks. It shouldn't be to own the libs. It shouldn't be any of that. It should be getting up and courageously telling people the truth in love. Because if we're not focused on the human soul, if we're not focused on humanity's depraved condition today, that frankly has very little to do with partisan politics, if we're not focused on just how broken people are and how desperately they are longing for something bigger, we've already lost the culture war. Which sucks, because like I said before, there is an opportunity today, unlike anything we've ever seen, to win, to overwhelmingly, to unanimously win. The fact that I was on the Whatever podcast last night with 2 active OnlyFans creators, with liberal, leftist college students, with people who self-identified as progressive politically, and every single woman at that table raised her hand and said, I want to get married. Please, I would love that. Every woman at that table said, I love men. I love men. And men have it hard in society today. And let's talk about that. Most, if not all of them, thought pornography was a horrible thing for society and was destroying our generation's souls. Every single one but one said, I want to be a mom, which blows my mind because they're certainly not thinking that's trendy or cool from a conservative movement that gate checks them at the door. They're not thinking that's cool because the church is urging all of these young people to have children. They need to do that a whole lot more, and they're not doing it enough. They're not doing that because it's the trendy, fun thing in feminism right now. To the contrary, every voice in society is telling them, don't have kids, don't get married, watch pornography, sleep with as many people as possible, make $1 zillion on OnlyFans. And they don't want that, which speaks volumes to me about the inherent wants, desires, and needs of our heart, of our souls, that our empty, secular, depraved, atheistic, divisive, angry culture cannot provide. And if we as conservatives, if we as Christians, if we as content creators, if we as whatever decide if you can't beat them, join them, and we stoop to that level, we've already lost. So I don't know who needs to hear that today, but it's been weighing on my heart lately. And seeing this incredible young man right outside the Whatever podcast, reminding us what we do every day here on the stream, here in our content. I might get backlash from some people who say that I'm not based enough, or I don't own people enough, or I'm not angry enough. But I have had the incredible, fortunate opportunity, truly as a gift from God alone, because otherwise I never would know. That is the second encounter I've had in my life so far that somebody did come to me a year or two later and say, your ability to speak the truth in love changed my world. It changed my life. And that's what we're really doing here. The truth is, no political movement can really save America or save Western civilization or change the world for every single person. But using the spheres of influence in our life, we can change the world for one person at a time by meeting them where they're at, sitting with them in the brokenness that culture has instituted right now, and walking with them hand in hand towards truth. Because the only reason we really care about any of these things we talk about every day is because people matter. Talking about being pro-life doesn't matter unless people matter. Talking about what to do about freedom of expression and free speech policy doesn't matter unless people matter. Talking about freedom of religion and your ability to share your faith publicly only matters because people matter. Allie Beth Stuckey is famous for saying policies only matter because people matter. If we don't find the common humanity in one another again, if we can't take a second to pause and stop owning each other all over the internet, and if we can't seize the golden opportunity at our fingertips to demolish the culture war once and for all, then we've already lost. But I do think there's hope to win. I see it every single day, even with people that the right wing or the conservative movement points the finger at and says, those stupid kids, those idiot leftists, they don't know what they're talking about. And maybe the most inspiring thing that I'm seeing outside of faith, and I know we've talked about faith quite a bit today, but faith is easily the most inspiring thing I'm seeing within our generation, a huge revival for God, is a revival of family and a revival of marriage and children, which are both being systematically attacked from every direction in society. I've said it 3 times, but I'm going to say it again because it should blow your mind that last night on the Whatever podcast, every single woman said she wanted to get married. Every single one. Every single one but one said that they wanted to become moms. And that is hugely important in the aspect of the culture war moving forward, because contrary to everything you've probably heard from the loudest politicians, from the most influential commentators and content creators, from the mainstream media, we are not actually living in an overpopulated society. To the contrary, the top 50 most developed nations are facing imminent population collapse. Truly, our birth rate is so low that we cannot replace our current population, and we are facing a catastrophic decline in humanity in the next several decades. Not like 200 years from now, not like 1,000 years from now, like in the next few decades, easily within our lifetime. If we can't encourage and beautify and acknowledge the sanctity of marriage and the family again. So before anything else, I think this is the first thing that we really need to be popularizing, making culturally cool and avant-garde and vogue for Generation Z again. This is from the U.S. Census website from last November, literally just a couple of months ago, that the United States population is projected to begin declining, actively declining within the second half of this century. Not 1,000 years from now, not a few hundred years from now, but actually by 2100, the total U.S. resident population is projected to increase by only 9.7% from 2022. So between 2022 and 2100, the total population of our country is only projected to increase by 9.7%. And most scenarios out there after 2100, most of the projections by population analysts and data scientists are providing multiple different scenarios of population decline after 2100. In fact, here's what they had to say about this. Again, this is on the census website for the United States. By 2100, the total population is projected to reach 366 million compared to the projection for the high immigration scenario, which puts the population at 435 million. The population for the middle series increases to a peak at 370 million in 2080 and then begins to decline, losing about 4 million people from 2080 to 2100. And the main reason for that, the main reason that we are not having enough children is not because of environmental factors or disease, although that is a huge problem in the United States of America and Western civilization. Unexplained, previously undiagnosed infertility is dramatically on the rise within our generation. And that can be attributed to a whole host of different factors, really the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear with endocrine disruptors and PFAs, forever chemicals, in our clothing. There was a huge study that was just conducted on athletic wear, and it's shocking what endocrine disruptors are found, for example, in the crotch of your favorite Lululemon leggings. Like, this is a very, very real thing. So it's in the clothes that we wear. It's in the food that we eat. It's in the water that we're drinking, in the chemicals in our water supply. It certainly is in all of the stuff that we put on our body every day, lotion and sunscreen and skincare and makeup. It's in our hair care products, our shampoo and conditioner. It's in candles that we're burning around our house. Endocrine disruptors are literally everywhere, which obviously is contributing to a huge rise in infertility for our generation. Nobody likes to have the hormonal birth control conversation, but it's absolutely warranted having that. Millennials and Generation Z women have been put on hormonal birth control pills for so long that now they're coming off of them after 10, 20 years and having a very, very hard time conceiving. All of the scientific experts will tell you that it's not related to your birth control, but the truth is we don't really want to fund any peer-reviewed studies about it. The pharmaceutical industry refuses to fund it because they are terrified of what the results are going to look like, and we would be educated ourselves about that. But the truth is, the reason that our fertility is declining in the United States of America really isn't about infertility diagnoses by itself. And if it is, that's a minority of the problems that we are having in conceiving children in society. Instead, Pew Research says that the main reason we are experiencing a dramatic fertility drop is because of lifestyle choices, because people are not getting married, because people are waiting to have children until it's too late, and because we are watching a rise of cultural norms in avoiding family altogether. If you look at this graph, this shows global fertility rates across the world from 1990 to 2020. And you saw a really common trend, basically, or sorry, not global, this was across the United States. The blue line is specifically the United States as a whole, and then there's different states in gray beyond the blue line. But if you look at this blue line, where it peaked in kind of the mid-early 2000s, dramatically starts dropping off after 2020. And you're watching a general decline of fertility rates across the entire country. This is a very universal problem in the United States. In 2020, they say the national general fertility rate was down almost 16% from its average over the decade ending in 2010, with 10 states experiencing reductions exceeding 20%. Mostly Western states led the way in incurring the most dramatic long-term fertility rate declines, despite often experiencing strong population gains overall, due largely to immigration, which is fascinating. In Arizona, for example, the general fertility rate was down 31% from its 2001 to 2010 annual average. They had the largest overall reduction nationally. And among the state's Hispanic population, it dropped nearly 50% from pre-Great Recession levels, exceeding nearly all other states' declines for Hispanic women. Teenage fertility rates have declined quite substantially, and we could argue that that's a good thing or not. But generally speaking, the main reasons that these things are happening is because of cultural shifts affecting fertility rates. One of the most prominent changes being Americans delaying or foregoing marriage. So we're not just talking in isolation about actual physiologic infertility. That is a huge problem, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be researched, and it's something that the mainstream media is specifically avoiding talking about, as is Big Pharma and the FDA and our government and everybody in between. But largely, this is happening because of the choice to delay or entirely forego marriage. And if you start thinking about this within the lens of the last several years in American history, this makes total sense to me. Marriage has been painted, especially to millennials and Gen Zers, as an archaic, outdated, patriarchal institution that is horrible for you. It's horrible for men because it puts women in positions of financial control over your future, and it's going to exploit you. So you should just never get married. It's horrible for women because men will control you and tell you what to do, and you'll have to be submissive to them. So you should never get married. And also it's going to hurt your career because you have to go home to a husband and especially kids. You don't want one of those. So why would you do that when you could just sleep with everybody that you possibly want and have non-committal relationships? Because that's a whole lot more freeing. As I've already said repeatedly, marriage rates are actually among the lowest they ever have been in the United States since 1867, when we began recording marriage rates on a national level. And for the first time ever right now, we are bouncing back. The marriage rate is increasing to pre-2020 levels because of Gen Z. So you're watching this cultural pendulum shift happening with marriage, and I'm really hopeful it starts happening with children too, because our foregoing of marriage or delay of marriage is what's causing the United States population to face imminent collapse. Women are marrying later in life, Pew Research says, and birth rates for single women are less than half of those who are married. Women are also delaying having children until later in life. Part of the reason why fertility rates have dropped among women in their 20s, which has more than offset increases for women in their late 30s and 40s. A recent analysis by the Brookings Institution projected that for young women today, the average number of children they have over their lifetimes would fall compared with the average number for women in prior generations. A recent Pew Research survey found that an increasing share of U.S. adults without children reported they were unlikely to ever have children. Gee, I wonder why. When society and the education system and the entertainment industry and our favorite politicians and the most powerful people in the world are telling you, kids? No. That's terrible. You'll be miserable. You won't have any friends. You'll never go on vacation. It's bad for the environment. Climate change. Don't you care about the climate? Why would you ever have children? That's so terrible for you. Rah, rah, rah. Away from kids. Just get a cat. Shocking. That propaganda worked. It worked so effectively, in fact, that in the United States, birth rates, according to Vox, have been falling since the Great Recession, dropping almost 23% at the national level between 2007 and 2022. Today, the average American woman has about 1.6 children, down from 3. So we've cut that in half since 1950 and significantly below the replacement rate of 2.1 children needed to sustain a stable population. How are we not hearing about this? Because instead, I hear probably 40, 50 times a day, scrolling through social media, tuning in casually to the mainstream media if I have a news hit or something, looking at newspaper articles, that we're facing overpopulation. That the world is expected to collapse because we have too many people. And yet, across the developed world, a healthy replacement rate for society is not being achieved. In the United States, in Italy, all across Asia, look at Japan and South Korea, it's a disaster. In fact, Vox has numbers to back that up. In Italy, they say 12 people now die for every 7 babies born. In South Korea, the birth rate is down to 0.81 children per woman. They literally will cease to exist within the next several decades. In China, after decades of a strictly enforced one-child policy, the population is shrinking for the first time since the 1960s. In Taiwan, the birth rate stands at 0.87%. Commentators, lawmakers, population scientists are calling this a demographic crisis or the great people shortage, which obviously is going to impact the global economy. It's certainly going to impact our structures of governance. But more importantly, it impacts our culture. Because if people aren't getting married and then we're not making new people, the attack on the family will eventually succeed because we'll run out of people. which is a very scary reality. I think we often think about the culture war as, what if we don't change enough people's minds? What if we don't bring enough people over to our side? What if we just like straight up run out of people? Which is a very real possibility. A different article from 2019 from Pew Research says the world's population is projected to nearly stop growing by the end of the century. The world population, not the United States. World population growth has been projected to flatten in coming decades for years now. This article is from 5 years ago. And yet, every time I turn around, somebody in a position of influence is telling me, overpopulation, the world is facing imminent population over control. We can't even feed people. The poverty crisis, the food crisis, the water crisis, there's too many people. Not actually what's being said. So I don't know where that narrative is coming from. But this is for the first time in all of modern history that this is happening. The world population being expected to virtually stop growing by the end of the century, due in large part to falling global fertility rates. The global fertility rate, just so you guys know, not just in the United States, is expected by 2100 to be 1.9 births per woman, down by 2.5. And just as a reminder, the replacement rate to sustain a healthy population is 2.1 births per woman by 2070. If you really want to think meta about all of this, then think, okay, beyond even just attacking the family and attacking marriage and trying to gaslight the next generation into thinking that's bad for them, we're actually taking fertility away from women. We're convincing them it's better to use a surrogate or IVF. We're growing embryos or embryo-like beings in laboratories in places like San Francisco that are entirely from stem cells, not even involving human procreation or conception whatsoever. Entirely differentiated stem cells in a laboratory. That's not frightening. As if to usher in the removal of your ability to naturally procreate at all at some point in the next several decades. So this is a prime example to me of opportunity. It's opportunity because, A, we are longing for family. A Her Campus survey said that 93% of Gen Zers currently on college campuses still want to get married in a radically countercultural middle finger backlash moment to the establishment left that is trying to demonize marriage. And with marriage, we're longing for family. We're longing for motherhood. We're longing for an authentic experience in raising a family when family is being demonized. And we might not think about getting married or having children as overtly conservative things to do or culture war oriented things, but they are. In fact, getting married and having children is just about the most conservative thing somebody could possibly do with their life. So I guess my message today is pretty simple. Get married and make more babies. It's a pretty exciting time to be a young Gen Zer. I'm getting married in 80 days exactly from today, and we can't wait to have a big, beautiful family, God willing, in whatever capacity that ends up looking like. But I'm so excited for that. And I'm so optimistic and hopeful and joyful seeing people from across the political spectrum, across the religious spectrum, across all of it, be willing to say, you know what? That's actually beautiful. That's something that I want. Why is that so demonized by society? Maybe it's demonized for a reason. Let's rebel against these lies and fight for truth and goodness again. The attack on truth is only going to get crazier. And I think we all are facing a whole lot of political fatigue at the moment, especially when everybody's fighting with everybody and everything's constantly a debate and everything is so negative. You suck. You're not on my side. You don't agree with me on any of these things. Blah, 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 blah. Not productive, not helpful, not actually making a difference. But stuff like this, encouraging people to get married, getting married yourself, being willing to put yourself out there and genuinely fall in love, being open to children and having a lot of children, having big families. These are tangible, as I'm shaking the mic, culture war winning steps that we can take to change the world for the better. And they're fun things to do in the process. I think we all need a healthy dose of optimism in our very pessimistic, very apocalyptic, very divisive and angry society now more than ever before. So if I can leave you guys with a message of encouragement or hope on the stream today, it would be this. Don't fall for the easy, low-hanging fruit of adding more divisiveness, anger, and vitriol to the world. Because we have the capacity to change the world forever within this generation if we're willing to do one very simple thing: to speak the truth in love. Not to own somebody, not to make them look stupid, not to garner virality or clicks for ourselves or 5-second internet fame, but to build a society and culture we are proud to call home again, to fight for the salvation of souls, which will always be more important than the stupid divisiveness that you see on Twitter. And to fight back against authoritarian leftism in tangible, meaningful ways by reviving marriage, by reviving the family, by eating real food, by rejecting big pharma, by standing for freedom of expression, by going to church on Sunday. I don't think we often look at these things as contributing to changing culture, but they do. And imagine if we could inspire every single member of our generation to long for those things and to engage in them. We wouldn't even have a culture war anymore. There would be no need for one. Humility and joy are so important in what we do every day. So is fortitude and the ability to keep getting up and the strength to keep doing that. But it often, I think from a fortitude perspective, leads us to be jaded, to lose hope, to think everything is the end of the world, that the world is going to shit. You can choose to look at it that way. And a lot of people do. Most people do, I think. Or we can see the brokenness of leftism as an opportunity to reach people in that brokenness, in the depths of despair, grab their hand and yank them out of it, to inspire them to something greater. Literally, our world is depending on it. Like if we don't do that, actually, we're in really big trouble. The world's population is going to cease to exist if we don't do that. So a little bit of optimism might actually save us. It's not naive. It's not youthful ignorance. It's not stupid to wish the best for the future and to fight for the best for the future. And I hope that every single one of us can engage in a 5-second examination of conscience to ask why we get out of bed every day. If your answer isn't to love others, to love God, to fight for truth, to create a better tomorrow than we had yesterday, maybe it's time to reevaluate some things. And especially it's time to reevaluate some things at a movement level, if that's the case. I'm done ranting for today. I'm sorry that got a little contentious potentially, but I think the world really does need to hear it. And I want to encourage each and every one of you, please don't lose your faith. Don't lose your hope. Don't lose your optimism. Because this country, this world, these values are still worth fighting for. If you're looking for a little bit of extra optimism in our very pessimistic world, I highly, highly, highly encourage you guys to check out the new Easter in the Early Church series put on by our amazing friends over at Hallow. I'm pointing to all of the logos depending on where you guys are watching. Hallow is America's largest Christian prayer app. They were the #1 app on the App Store a few weeks ago, which was so awesome to see. And so many of you guys said that you did the Pray 40 campaign and it totally changed your life throughout Lent. Easter in the Early Church has been just as inspiring, if not better so far in the first couple of days that they've had the new series. series. You can check that out along with 5,000 other prayers and meditations on Hallow by going right now to hallow.com, HALLOW.com/Isabel, ISABEL. 3-month free trial for all of their stuff on their platform. They are incredible to work with. And I know we could all use a dramatic shakeup towards optimism, especially in our prayer lives, because prayer works. So stay prayed up and join us over on Hallow. And thank you so much to our amazing friends at Public Square for continuing to make the stream possible every day. Public Square is doing some amazing things behind the scenes right now, you guys, as America's largest marketplace of businesses, tens of thousands of them that are all pro-family, pro-freedom, and pro-faith. We absolutely love cheering them on. So if you're looking for businesses to support that share your values or somewhere to add your small business and make a difference in your own family's life, head to publicsquare.com, all one word, publicsquare.com, and jump over there for some more stuff moving forward. You guys, I love you so very much. I want to thank a couple of you for putting in some super chats today. Alex, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing, Isabel. You are truly inspiring. Thank you. That means the world to me. The Shadow Band dropped $5 in our Rumble chat saying donating to domestic terrorists. According to the FBI, I probably am on a short lift somewhere. We've got Soaring Eagle donating in our YouTube super chat, and Scarlett donating in our YouTube super chat. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support. And as we're ending the stream today and I jump over to film some more content for you guys, please do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you guys are watching, and share this stream with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Love you guys so very much. See you tomorrow back on the stream at 3 p.m. Eastern.